Quick question. What's the value of a bottle of water? What do you pay for a bottle of water? Well, that's an interesting question. Today we're going to talk about value. And here's the important thing. You as the seller, you don't get to determine the value. You only get to guess what the value is. It's the buyer who determines what the value is. Welcome to episode 7 of the Cheeky Sales Coach, where we talk about value. I have my bean counter hat on because we're talking about money. So what is the value of a bottle of water? You know, we've all been there, right? You go to the grocery store, and right by the checkout counter, they have a 24-pack of bottled water for $2.99, maybe $3.99. Then you go to a conference, and they're handing out bottles for free as long as you're at the conference. But if you go up to your room, a bottle of water is $6. Then you go to a concert, woohoo! If they ever let us get back to concerts, and you see a bottle of water that you know you can buy for $1 at the 7-Eleven, and it's $2.50 or $5 at the concert. Sometimes it's more. Sometimes you get a big bottle for $3. Sometimes you get a big bottle for $8. And it all has to do with where you are and what you're willing to pay. Now, just for a moment, come back with me to the days when you could go to Disneyland. Can you even imagine? If you haven't been there, trust me, you don't get a bottle of water for free, and you don't get it for $1, right? You know before you walk in the door that you're going to pay a higher price for water that you could get out of the tap. So, what creates value with a bottle of water? Obviously, the word of the day is value. Value is very simply the importance or the worth that is placed on something. One type of value is money, but money is not the only value, and you need to know that if you want to trade something for somebody else's money. Okay, let me get nerdly with you for just a minute. So, this is a hard drive from when I first started managing computer systems. So this hard drive holds about 1 megabyte of data, which is approximately nothing by today's standards. Here's the thing, when you think about value, when I was managing a system with a room full of these drives, a new kind of hard drive was invented. It was smaller, it was more compact. It was about this size, and this is probably more or less the size of a hard drive that you will find inside your computer today, if you have a desktop. Now, this had no value to me because I had an entire room for these big drives, right? So when somebody came to me and said, oh, well, we can save you a bunch of space. I got all kinds of space. Yeah, you're not giving me any value by trying to sell me something that takes up less space. In that case, what I needed was capacity and speed. So the people who could make these big boys go faster and hold more, they didn't want to save me any money or space. And I didn't need to save space, so I didn't need these smaller drives. Now, skip ahead a bit. Once this size hard drive became a very common thing, then people wanted higher and higher capacity. So the fact that that thing only held 1 meg, well, this needed to hold 60 or 80. And then that became many, many megs, and then it became gigabytes, right? And then people said, well, you know, I got this thing called a laptop, and that's just not going to work in it. So they created an even smaller drive that held even more space. This tiny little drive fits in a laptop and holds 250 gigabytes of data. So that's 250,000 times more than that big drive. And then you have external drives that you could plug into the laptop to hold even more space. And eventually, you've seen it, the little SD card. So this one holds 2 gigabytes, but nowadays, these things hold more and more, and you've seen it. The card that fits inside your phone is less than 1/4 this size and probably holds a lot more data. So what became valuable over time was space and size, right? And so the capacity is almost irrelevant. Nowadays, almost nobody actually needs the drives that you could buy today. Almost nobody absolutely needs to have a 2, 3, or 4 terabyte drive. And yet, that's pretty much all you can buy. It's like the smallest hard drive you can buy. The point is, we've gotten to the point where the size, even the capacity, doesn't matter. What we care about in the 21st century is speed. So what had value in the storage industry changed over time. And now, with storage in the cloud, we see that storage is essentially unlimited, and what we need is it to be reliable and to be there at a certain price. So value is not determined by somebody saying, hey, it cost me whatever, $70 to build one of these, and so you need to give me $75. That's not the way the world works. Too many salespeople think that value comes from the cost of production plus X%. Now let's take a look at where value really comes from. One way to look at value is what Michael Porter calls the value chain, which basically says that you take the cost of designing something plus the cost of engineering plus the cost of production plus the cost of sales, and in some cases the cost of maintenance, right? All of your costs, and that should somehow be related to value. And that's one way of determining value. At least it's one way of figuring out what it's going to cost you to produce something. But the problem with that is it doesn't always work, because the resulting service or product might just be too expensive. Or, to be honest, it might be too cheap. Time and time again, companies miss the mark because they overvalue or undervalue their product. So this product had value in December of 2019. But today, it has no value at all, right? So what should I pay for this, and does the cost of production have anything to do with it? When I say that you have to look at the value from the buyer's perspective, it's very straightforward. Think about what you need and what you buy and why you're willing to pay something. Here's a great example. Let's just say you have a car and it needs to have the oil changed. So what is the line that will get you to pay somebody else to change the oil? Now, I grew up in a car family. I have 5 brothers and a dad who was a mechanic. So I've changed a lot of oil in my day, but guess what? I haven't changed my own oil in a lot of years for a very simple reason. For $29 or $39 or $49, I could have other people's children change my oil. And so it's worth it for me. Now the question is, what's too much and what's too little? I would not pay $200 to have my oil changed. I doubt I would pay $100, but 29 all day and all night. So 29 is too cheap. 39 feels like the neighborhood. I normally end up paying 49 or 59 with the oil. I like to go to a place where they throw in the car wash and talk me into a few other things. So the truth is, I go in for an oil change, I buy a few other things, I usually spend $90. So for me, that has value at that price point, but I already know in my head the price point where it wouldn't make sense for me. Some people say, my time is so valuable, they would pay $200. They would pay $500 for an oil change. So I'm definitely not there, but maybe someday. Point is, I'm the buyer. I get to decide what it's worth, right? So when you think from the buyer's perspective, how do you determine value? Well, the easiest way is, what are you providing with regard to solving problems and providing products and services? So the first part is solving the problem. Solving problems makes you very valuable. When I look at a problem, what happens immediately is I open my wallet. How do I get this fixed? So in an emergency, all kinds of things are possible. But on day-to-day operations, well, the price is a lot lower. There's a limit to how much I'm going to pay for an airline ticket, right? So unless I have a problem, the price doesn't go up. I know if I make changes at the last minute, that's going to cost more. Now, in terms of services, when you think about products and services, there's obvious value in something that someone is going to acquire. I will tell you this, I'm a staunch believer that what they call markup is a 20th century concept. It is outdated and you should avoid it. Markup very simply means that you take the cost of production or the cost of acquisition and you add X% and that becomes the price that you charge your clients. Today, because so many things are based on services and so many things have variable costs, you need to look at the true value of what you're selling and base the price on that. And that's where it becomes difficult because you have to figure out what your clients are willing to pay. And so part of this is to look at what are they paying now, right? Let's say that you've got a service that people are buying. You want to get it to the next level. You're going to add some features. You're going to add some benefits. And so you try to add value to that, but then you're actually selling something different and the price is going to be different. Price is going to be higher. The question is, how much higher? Every once in a while, somebody stumbles onto something that makes a whole lot of people's lives much easier. And that has value. And it has value far beyond the cost of production. A great example from 2020 is Zoom. The cost for Zoom to add one more meeting was approximately nothing in March of 2020. But when suddenly millions of people needed to be on it, then they have to upgrade their systems and so forth, their costs did go up. But then, once they had a higher capacity, the cost of one more person doing one more meeting is essentially zero again. So Zoom can't look at the cost of production as something that they're going to add X% to. They've got to determine what is the value to you as a subscriber. We will come back to the question of value and how you set value, but I want you to begin thinking about what you pay for a bottle of water and how it has more to do with your circumstances as the buyer than anything related to the production cost of that bottle. Hey, if you learned anything in this, do me a favor, give me a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. And remember, keep your chin up because there's a whole lot of sales out there waiting for you. Thanks for tuning in to the Cheeky Sales Coach podcast and video. Call to action. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss a thing.